You're listening to Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast.
When your heart is aching and your world is shaking, don't give up. No, don't give up.
Hello and welcome to Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast. I'm your host, Jana Short, and today I'm here with Tamara Golden. Tamara is the owner and CEO of Journeywork Retreats, a retreat strategy and planning company operating across the U.S. and worldwide. Combining 20 plus years in travel, event planning, and coaching, Tamara has developed a proprietary retreat strategy and planning process that helps you design, market, fill, and monetize your retreats. Through a range of services, Journeywork Retreats is committed to supporting coaches, healers, and transformational leaders like yourself in crafting retreats that accelerate outcomes for your clients while increasing enrollments, referrals, and revenue. Ooh, those are great R's for your business. I like all those R's. Welcome, Tamara. I'm so glad that you're here with us today. And by the way, I love this lady so much, I'm having her do all my stuff. So I'm really glad you're here to educate all of us.
Hi, Jana. Happy to be here.
So we're doing a series of 4 with Tamara, where she's going to educate us on the business of bonding and leveraging your business to build your business. So I think that this is a little bit different, but I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into all of that.
Sure. So what a lot of people don't know about me is that I have 20 years as a coaching, as 20 years coaching background. So I was a life and career coach for 20 years before I went into the travel space, and retreats is really the absolute perfect marriage of everything that I am good at, passionate about. So it's just the perfect storm coming together and confluence of all the things and all the experiences and skills that I've gained over my life. So that's why I do retreats. I'm passionate about both how they help entrepreneurs grow their business, but also how they help them serve their clients much more deeply as well.
So I know that a lot of people, first of all, I'm going to just tell you that before 2020 and COVID hit, I was doing retreats and I had to knock it down to only 4 a year, but I was making so much money and building so much client base information with these retreats. And before they would leave, they were rebooking for the next one. I mean, that's how incredible they are. And so for those of you who don't know what a retreat is, I'm going to have you educate on exactly what it is.
Yeah, so this will be the first of 4 series that we're going to do, where I'm going to talk about the business of bonding, and that's how to leverage retreats in growing your business. But the first thing, step number 1, is we've got to make sure that we're all on the same page on what we mean by a retreat, because I feel that word gets bandied around a lot, and I want to give you the Journeywork Retreats definition of what a retreat looks like, and also the 3 essential elements that you really need for a successful retreat. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
I love it. Well, I'm going to just give you the floor because you're the genius in the zone, and let you just go ahead and share all about it.
All right. Well, the first thing is, I want to make sure what people understand what a retreat is, because a lot of people use that term, and I feel that they misuse that term. And let me tell you, we've all been to in-person events that were called retreats, myself included, where we were closed up in a hotel meeting room for 12 hours a day, 3 days in a row, and never saw the light of day. That is not a retreat. So when I'm talking about a retreat here at Journeywork Retreats, now there are some exceptions to the rules, but largely we're talking about an event that's at least 3 full days, if not 4, if not 5, some are even 7, but at least 3 full days of content. And that content, that teaching portion or training or educational piece is only, are you ready for this? Only about 2 to 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
2 to 4 hours a day. So normally people ask me, well, what's the perfect size? Well, how many people should I have at my retreat? Again, I've done retreats up to as many as 100, or events up to as many as 100 that are retreats. But normally for solo entrepreneurs, we're talking about a much smaller, more intimate cohort. So we're talking about at least 6 and maybe up to 12 paying clients, maybe more than that, and at least yourself as a facilitator and maybe a co-facilitator. So 1 or 2 facilitators. Again, that can differ. but I'm talking about kind of broad brushstrokes, what I'm seeing as the norm. So usually it's a solo entrepreneur that's leading a small group off to a destination, right? And it's that person or maybe a co-teacher and 6 to 12 participants. Now, the reason I say that is once you get past 12 participants and 1 or 2 facilitators, you start to lose that intimacy factor. Think about how many people you can logistically fit around a large table. Okay. Think about Thanksgiving. All of a sudden you're spilling over to the kids table, right? Well, we really, retreats should be about inclusion. So once you start to get larger to that and you have to separate your participants up into different tables and different rooms and different, modes of transportation for getting from point A to point B, you start to lose the intimacy factor. So that's why I give those numbers. That's my reason for that. Now, normally, not always, but normally a retreat will also involve overnight accommodations. Again, I've done them without, but what is really nice about having the participants be together the whole time is that think about really what you're accomplishing with this retreat. They're stepping into a whole new mind space, heart space. They're getting away from everything at home, all of their distractions, giving themselves permission to open up to that learning and teaching that you're bringing to the table. So to keep them all together kind of keeps them in that sacred bubble or, special space that you've provided for them. If they're leaving the venue at night, you kind of lose a little bit of that, right? So so most of the retreats involve overnight accommodations. So is this all set? Jana, do you have any questions so far? Is this all sounding in line with what you're normally doing as well?
It all sounds in line. And not only does it sound in line, a retreat is about creating an emotion, like an emotional event. And it's very hard to do when there's 50 people there, right? It becomes more of a convention or a conference. And when they're with you and it's a smaller group of people, you're creating that bond with them that lasts forever. And
absolutely.
By the way, you will be exhausted if you were to do more than 12, because I had 15 once at a retreat and it was exhausting. And honestly, I feel like it wasn't one of my best because I did not connect with each and every person the way I wanted to.
Yeah. And that's why, people ask, what's the sweet spot for when I should bring an assistant in? I usually say that anywhere 10 and above, you should have a co-facilitator or an assistant, because really your job as the facilitator is to hold space for everyone who's there. Okay. You are the hostess with the mostess. And so you need somebody else who's running around and chasing after the logistics and handling all of the issues that are coming up so that you can really just be present. All right. So now that we've talked a little bit about what the retreat looks like and my definition, I'm going to talk about the 3 essential elements. Okay. These are the 3, if you ask me, these are the 3 must-have components to a transformative, impactful retreat. Okay. And I'm talking about, that's because that's your goal is you don't want people to pay money, come on a retreat with you and not have it be impactful in some way. So this is how you make it impactful. Okay. Component number 1, learning time. So there has to be some teaching, training, even if it's a mastermind that comes together in person, there needs to be some facilitated discussion. So something that is structured around education, teaching, training. Because listen, for 2 reasons. If that component is not there, this is merely a vacation. Okay, so part of what they're paying for, listen up because this is important. Part of what they're paying for is your genius, your wisdom, your healing, your professional development pointers, whatever it is that you're there to impart. They're there for that. That's part of what they're paying for. So again, that piece is super important. The training or teaching or learning time. Again, only how many hours? About 2 to 4 a day. Now you can break that up if you want. You can have 2 hours in the morning. You can go off and do some activities. You could regroup in the evening and do a touch base or some reflection work, guided meditation, whatever. However you want to divvy that up in the day is fine, but no more than 2 to 4 hours. I will come find you and slap your hand if you're doing more than that. Okay, so that's learning time, number 1. What is the next component? Because you might be saying to me, well, Tamara, if I'm only doing 2 to 4 hours of teaching time, what the hell are we doing the rest of the time? So I'm about to tell you, we've got component number 2 of a successful retreat. Component number 2, because remember, this is the business of bonding here, people, is together time. This is the time where you allow your participants to engage with one another and engage with the beautiful venue and beautiful destination that you have chosen. I mean, again, back to what we were saying earlier, how many of us have been to conferences? We go to some gorgeous place, we're stuffed in a hotel room for 3 days, we go back to the airport, we never saw anything. This is not that. We're going to get out, we're going to do some things, we're going to do some fun things as a group. It could be activities on site, it could be cooking lessons, it could be going out for a hike, it could be going out and doing some sightseeing, but we're going to do something as a group, okay, and have some fun together. Because part of the magic of a retreat is not only the participants engaging with you as the facilitator, but it is also the engagement they have with the other folks who are along for the ride. Oftentimes, these are people who are on a similar journey. They're like-minded folks. Maybe they're battled with similar issues, depending upon the nature of and the focus of your retreat. But it's just as important that they feel that camaraderie and that connection and that community. This is going to come back to you in the future when I talk about how this comes back to you in those re-enrollments and that revenue and those referrals. This is a big piece in that puzzle. Okay, so number 2 is together time. Jan, are we ready for number 3?
I am, and together time is my favorite because that's when you really get to know the people coming to your retreat. Like they let loose, they laugh, you get to know their personality. And that I think I'm a great educator, but I'm pretty sure it's the together time that they are booking for the next one before they leave.
You better believe it. And by the way, that's super important for them to be able to see you in that capacity as a facilitator. I mean, they get to see you on a retreat. They get the unplugged version. I mean, they see you maybe with no makeup, maybe with your hair down, but sipping a glass of wine, whatever it is, it's those nuggets that they exchange with you in that really intimate time over a meal or on a fun excursion. That is part of what they're paying for because they want to get that up close and personal time with you because maybe they've only ever seen you on a Zoom room. They want that in-person time with you and with the others. So together time. All right, rolling along for number 3, third component. Are you ready? Because this is the one that everybody forgets.
I'm ready.
You should be sitting on the edge of your seat right now. Are you ready? We should have a drum roll. So number 3, downtime. Downtime, people, downtime. So here is part of the secret sauce that makes your retreat transformative and impactful. You've got to allow people to absorb, assimilate, reflect on all that wonderful training and teaching that you've been sharing. Or again, I go back to the we've all done it. We've all been there. These conferences, these 3-day conferences where they talk at you for 12 hours a day, 3 days straight. You've got literally notebooks full of notes. I'm as guilty as anybody. I could go over here on the edge of my desk. I've got about 5 notebooks full of notes from conferences I've been to. And you get home and what do you do with them? Nothing, because you haven't had any time to really act on them and absorb and assimilate. So what makes a retreat transformative is to allow your folks that downtime. Also, the introverts are going to need it. And I've got news for you. You as a facilitator are going to need it too, because you've got to guard your energy and your reserves. Okay. So everybody needs some downtime, you included. So that's crucial element number 3. Now you can actually structure that in if you want. You can ask your participants to do some journaling. You can ask them to meditate. You can ask them even to break out in dyads with pairs of 2 with another participant and maybe go over some questions or some exercises to allow the material to land. So you can structure that, but it's really a time for them to process. And by the way, it's also important for another factor, because This is a retreat. So you want them to come home relaxed and rejuvenated and rested. So for God's sake, give them a chance to go take a nap or curl up with a book or just take a walk along around the grounds. But you want them to come back not only feeling full in their soul and full in their mind, but also really rested and rejuvenated. And we're all guilty of that vacation where we run ourselves ragged and need a vacation when we come back from our vacation. This is not that again. So those are the three elements. Number one, learning time. Number two, together time. Number three, down time. Jana, any questions, any reflections?
I have so many questions about retreats. So since we're doing the what part of retreats and what they are, what do you think, for me, I know what I want my clients to walk away with. I have an intent when I create my retreat on exactly what I want to teach and what I want them to walk away with at the end. And I don't want to be disappointing them. So when you're creating a retreat, I have always done it in like an Airbnb home. And there's a lot of work to that. And getting downtime is kind of hard because some people don't understand the downtime, right? So it's really hard. What is the difference between doing one at a hotel where everyone has their separate space and they show up in one space and they go back, or the more intimate space of maybe an Airbnb? What's the difference as far as moving forward with something like that?
I love that question. And thank you so much for asking that, because I have a lot of people that I coach, and I know one of the, it depends on your budget point. Obviously, an Airbnb is great if you're going for a very low budget retreat. But as you mentioned, there are issues that come up with Airbnbs. First of all, a lot of them won't let you have a large group there. Some of them have restrictions on how many people you can have there and in what capacity. So that may be an impediment right there. But then you've got the issue that you just brought up of downtime, because if you are in a run of house, as I like to say, scenario where you're all grouped together, you don't necessarily have the capacity for setting those boundaries in the way that you would in a hotel where everybody goes to their separate space, right? Because you're still, if we go to that hostess analogy, you are the hostess. If you're renting a house and all of a sudden it feels like your house and you've got to be running everything. And by the way, some other things people don't think about when they rent Airbnbs. Who's going to be cleaning all the bathrooms every day at the end of the day and cleaning all the public spaces and doing all the cooking? Oh, and who's going to be guarding the door when people want to come and go at all hours of the day and night? So there's issues with Airbnbs that people may not think about going in that I want to make sure they're very cognizant of. Now, doing it at a hotel, here's what I like, because it depends on the hotel, right? And this is where I love to find unique little boutique properties or places that are a hybrid. So it's not an Airbnb. It's actually like a retreat venue that's set up specifically for retreats, or a very small hotel, or a subsection, a floor of a hotel, or a suite area within a hotel, where you can have that sense of being all together as a group, but you have all of the amenities. You've got a restaurant downstairs, and nobody has to worry about cooking. You've got maid service coming in. Nobody has to worry about cleaning. All of these added things that for you as a retreat planner take a huge amount off your plate, but it also adds to that feeling of luxury for the event, because you want your folks to feel pampered in some way, right? You want them to feel pampered. So really the hotel experience or retreat venue experience is going to lend itself to that more than an Airbnb. So I hope that answered your questions, but if not, fire away, because that's what we're here for.
No, that was a big question for me, because I've always done it at Airbnbs. And honestly, it's very exhausting. And all of those issues that you pointed out, all of those have come up. Are the girls who are away from their kids, right? And so they're at the pool at 2 a.m. partying and having a good time and bonding, and others are sleeping. So every one of those issues I have had to deal with. So I've never done one at a hotel. So when I talk to you, that is going to be my next.
The other issue with an Airbnb, and let me mention this because this is actually a really, really important one, is finding everybody, because Airbnbs are normally homes, right? That people are renting out. They're estates, or if you can get large estates or homes. So here's the issue. They're not designed to be hotels. So they may not have rooms that are identical, and they may not have rooms that all have ensuite bathrooms. Well, let me tell you, then you get into the issue of, well, who gets the nice room? Who gets the master bedroom? Who gets the little kids room with the twin beds? Do you need twin beds? Is the bedding configuration even consistent throughout the rooms? And by the way, does everybody get their own bathroom? Because most of us, when we come on a retreat, we really don't want to have to share a bathroom. So it gets into a whole other set of issues that become problematic because, people talk when they're on retreats. They all want the same bedroom. Nobody wants to feel like they got slighted and they got the small bedroom and somebody else got the king master suite, So you get into that level of issues as well with Airbnbs.
And as a host of retreats, I want my energy to go for my clients, not wondering where someone is. Are they safe? You're right. When it is in an Airbnb, you feel like you have to host it as your personal home almost.
Yes.
And so it worked out so much better for me to I think it's going to be much better stepping away and having those facilities where we can meet in a group room. We can have do you do excursions when you're on a retreat? Like you can book excursions through you where you can take your, I don't know, zip lining or
Absolutely.
One of my friends did, trapeze. Like she was in New York and they actually had a trapeze class and made everyone fly through the air to face their fears. I will not be going to her class.
No, I mean, and that's the fun thing, Jen. That's what I love. I love crafting this with my clients because if you're smart about it, what you can try to do is find excursions and activities that actually complement what you're teaching. So if you are teaching about fear, you can find something that maybe like you've just given that example of the trapeze that would allow someone to face their fears in a very visceral way. But if you can think about how to complement it for people who are doing nutrition. I mean, doing a cooking class where if you're in, let's say, a foreign country and you're learning how to cook some specialties of that country, that would be a prime example of something that would be a no-brainer. So it's just, I love sort of thinking about how can we figure out how to complement the activities and the excursions with what you're teaching and training. And sometimes it's not a compliment. Sometimes it's just going out and doing something, just to have unadulterated fun. Or you're in a foreign place and there's this must-see site that's near where you're staying and you have to go see it. And by the way, that's the other reason that I like the smaller numbers. I talk about max 12 paying participants and sort of 2 facilitators at that point, 14. And I wouldn't go maybe above 16 because the other reason is that half coaches tend to be around 16 seats. So all of a sudden, if you need to go beyond that, you're paying a lot more money for a full coach. And there are places that full coach may not be able to go in the way of smaller, more tucked away, hidden destinations that you may want to take your folks. So I'm all about the logistics. I'm very, very practical. So that's why I really like, that 16 cap for a total number. And I think the smaller than that, even the 14, 12 paying participants and two facilitators is really the magic number, if you ask me.
So my next question for you is, I believe this will be airing right around the end of May. And people are going to be asking about COVID. So the first question is, what does COVID look like with retreats? The second question is, how long of a process do I need to plan my retreats? Because I'm already planning for 2022. So, yeah. But I mean, that might be super early. Maybe they can plan it in 12 weeks. I have no idea, but what is the go time for planning a retreat?
So, okay, those are both excellent questions. So let me tackle the planning one first, because that's a little bit simpler. So the planning, I usually recommend that for a domestic retreat, so one here in the US, that you give yourself at least 6 to 9 months to plan it out. And the reason I say that, and I will not work with anyone if their retreat is not at least 3 months out. I'm not doing it. Because I want to set you up for success. And I just don't feel that you're doing that. If you're slapping it together, it's going to feel slapped together. Let me just put it that way. So what you want to do is allow yourself the time to really reverse engineer in terms of where this is fitting in with your programming, how you're marketing it, when you're marketing it, to whom. Thinking that through and planning for that is really going to allow you to fill your retreat more organically and easily. And so you need to give yourself that lead time. So I like 6 to 9 months for US-based retreats and 9 to 12 months for overseas retreats, because there are a few extra moving parts, obviously, when you're talking about an overseas event. So That's the planning timeline. So I'm so glad you asked, because it is not too soon to start planning for 2022, people. I got news for you. And all of this is going to be coming back. Our gathering, traveling is all going to be back by 2022. And there is going to be such a demand. So you really want to get on it now and be at the front of that curve in meeting that demand. All right. So now let's talk about COVID. So I have news for you, Jana. Are you ready for this? There are people who have been hosting retreats throughout 2020.
I know.
I know of, I have a woman in my fold who did a retreat. So at the beginning of March, the first week in March, in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and had 20 participants, 26 total when you counted her staff that was on hand. So, she brought in a chef and other people. So can it be done? Absolutely. Are there extra things that you need to be cautious about or thinking about, or certainly communicating with your clients? Absolutely. So masks may be here for a while yet. Social distancing may be here for a while yet. Certainly, and this is why I like hotels again over Airbnbs. I mean, the hotels have their hygiene protocols down pat. Okay, down pat. So they are cleaning the common rooms multiple times a day. They will only give you maid service in some cases if you request it, depending upon your desires. They have social distance seating in their restaurants. They've got all of this down. So that's another reason why I feel more comfortable with hotels and resorts and dedicated retreat venues than Airbnbs moving out of the pandemic, because I just trust that they are cleaning their place and cleaning it well and have all their protocols. So yes, you may have to, there may be ways that you have to think about doing things a little bit differently in your meeting space. You sometimes have to have a conversation up front when you're setting your ground rules. Are you going to, some people may not be ready for hugging when we first get back in a room together. You've got to be kind of cognizant of having like a no hug rule, or maybe have a little sticker if you're accepting hugs, that kind of thing. So there's some things that you can do, but can it be done? Hell yes. And people have already been doing it and doing it successfully. And the reason they've been doing it is what I just alluded to. There is such a pent up desire for people to get together with other human beings in person. I mean, just the energy of being with other people in a room, but also a lot of us have been there. There's no one who's been untouched by 2020. I don't care if it was in a small way or a large way, personally, professionally. A lot of people have a lot of processing that they need and want to do, and doing it together with other people in person is a lot more impactful and meaningful in many ways than doing it online. People have done virtual events. I think we all know virtual is here to stay, but it cannot take the place of an in-person retreat. It just cannot.
Agree 100%. So my last question before we wrap this up is, for someone who's doing, like, let's just say 6 to 8 people, I think that's a good start for a first retreat, by the way,
yes.
Because then you see what's required of you and what's required of your team who's putting it together.
Yes.
And so you just learn more. It's the feedback retreat.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think a budget for someone who wants to connect with you? And by the way, I know that you have multiple services that you offer. Like, I'm the all-in girl. I don't want to deal with it. I want to deal with the people. That's not my zone of genius. And I want to be running around negotiating when I know somebody who already has those relationships. But what do you think, like, a price range for their budgeting is that they would be looking at if they want to start getting started for retreats in the next 6 to 9 months?
Gosh, Jana, that is just, I get that question a lot, but it is such an it depends question. So here's what I would say. I like your idea about starting small, and I would say start small and start local. There is no reason that you cannot have a retreat, up the road from where you live. I would say for that factor of them not going home in the evening, make it at least a 2-hour drive away, so people are not tempted to drive back and forth every night. But for example, I'm here in San Diego. I could easily have a retreat up in Palm Springs, Palm Desert. Santa Barbara is 3 hours away. There's so many beautiful places nearby. I'm sure there are beautiful places nearby everyone who's listening to this within a 2 or 3 hour drive. So start small, start local. In terms of budgeting, and I would say start small, start local, start with a 3-day. Start with a 3-day retreat. And you can always build up to that. You can do a full day VIP workshop with someone. You can do a half day workshop with a group. So you can start and ease your way slowly into doing the in-person events so that you and your tribe become comfortable with it. In terms of budget, it really, and here's where it depends. Are you going to be wanting to rent a 3-star property, a 4-star property, a 5-star property? What is in keeping with your brand and what is in keeping with the budget of what your demographic can afford? That's really the 2 questions that you need to be asking yourself, because if you're a luxury brand, you cannot get away with doing, a not so nice Airbnb, so I'll just say it, you won't be in consistency with your brand. So you need to be keeping in mind who you are, what your brand represents, what your demographic looks like and what they can afford, and then work that accordingly. So that's part of the conversation that I like to have with people is really, I like to get the full picture of who their clients are, where they are in their business, what are the price points of the other programs they're offering, because that helps us figure out what we should be looking at for a budget and what we can get away with in the budget that we've designated.
So my other question to you right before we leave is, I know that you have a survey that will help people understand where they're at in that game. And can you just tell us a little bit about the survey? And we're going to put the links in the show notes so you'll be able to click right on it and take that survey and find out like what the options are for you or how that looks. So can you tell us a little bit about the survey?
Absolutely. And you mentioned before the range of our services. So we actually do courses that are designed for the do-it-yourselfer. And those are courses that are interactive. They are taught live online. And then we also have everything from if you want to work with me one-on-one to put together a retreat or get a consultation on a retreat you're thinking about doing, all the way up to the done-for-you services where we do everything from soup to nuts. And you just have to show up and teach. So what we have available is what we call our retreat ready assessment, because as I mentioned, I like to start off with looking at where you are in your business, and that helps me understand how you want to embed retreats into your business and how we can help you do that successfully. So it's the retreat ready assessment. It's 15 questions. It's multiple choice, A or B. 15 questions. And then you have the opportunity to have a conversation with myself about, how you want to move forward and what that looks like for you timing wise. Is this something you're wanting to do right away in 12 months, 9 months, 6 months? Or is this an idea that you're kicking around for a year or two and you just want to get some more information? Wherever you are in your retreat journey, I would love to support you with that because you are my tribe.
Thank you so much. I can't wait for the other 3 parts because this was so educational for me. And I'm kind of a seasoned retreat person. So this was really educational. Thank you very much, Tamara.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to the Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast. Make sure to visit Jana's website, bestholisticlife.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, or listen there so you'll never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you simply tell a friend about the show. That'll help too. Let's change the world together, one health expert at a time. Looking forward to seeing you next time.